Okay, good evening, everybody. It is 6:03 p.m. This is the June 6, 2024 regular meeting of the Somerville Planning Board. I'm Mike Capuano. I'm the chairman of the planning board. With me tonight is Amelia Aboff, Jahan Habib, Luke Schuster, Debbie Howard Easton, and Michael McNeely. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Act of 2023, this meeting of the Planning Board will be conducted via remote participation. A video recording of these proceedings will be available on the city's website or by emailing planning@somervillema.gov. This meeting is being recorded. We have a number of items on our agenda tonight. We have 2 meeting minutes that we need to discuss, and then we have 2 public hearings, one of which has been requested to be continued, and the other will be opened and heard. So let's go with the approval of meeting minutes first. Does anybody have any comments, questions, or suggested revisions for the April 18, 2024 meeting minutes? Okay. Seeing none, the chair moves to adopt those draft minutes as the final minutes of the planning board for April 18, 2024, seconded by Amelia. Could we please have the roll call?
This is Steve Carey in the Planning Division. Michael McNeely.
Aye.
Debbie Howard Easton.
Aye.
Amelia Aboff.
Aye.
Jahan Habib.
Aye.
Luke Schuster.
Aye.
And Michael Capuano.
Aye. We have meeting minutes. Fantastic. Next one is the meeting minutes of May 2nd. Anybody have any comments, questions, or suggested revisions for those draft meeting minutes? Okay, seeing none, the chair moves to adopt those draft meeting minutes as the final meeting minutes of planning board, seconded by Amelia. Steve, if you could please call the roll.
This is Steve Carey. Michael McNeely.
Aye.
Debbie Howard Easton.
Aye.
Amelia Aboff.
Aye.
Jahan Habib.
Aye.
And Luke Schuster.
Aye.
And Michael Capuano.
Aye. We have meeting minutes. Steve, can you remind me, has 290 Revolution Drive, have they been previously opened?
Do not believe they've been previously open. I think they were first scheduled for the, I believe, May 16th meeting, and they were forwarded. They were continued at that meeting without being opened.
Because it was nobody, right? Okay, so I think they are required to be opened and continued. Is that right?
I think we are still within June 20th still would be within the 65 days that you have to open it, but if you wish to open it, you may.
Just in case there might be a quorum issue for the next hearing, I don't think there will be, but just in case, I don't want to leave these people outside of the window. I think it's appropriate to open it. The applicant has also requested a continuance to June 20th, so it'll be a formal opening of the public hearing and then a vote to continue. So please have the clerk read into the record the notice of public hearing for 290 Revolution Drive.
Absolutely, Mr. Chair. 290 Revolution Drive, ZP 24-000024. Liberty Mutual Insurance Company seeks a major amendment to a previously issued special permit, PB 2018-12, in the Assembly Square Mixed Use ASMD District.
Okay, and that applicant has requested a continuance to June 20th. Does anybody have an issue with continuing that agenda item? Seeing none, the chair moves to continue that agenda item to the next meeting, which is June 20th, seconded by Amelia. Steve, can you please call the roll?
This is Steve Carey. Michael McNeely.
Aye.
Debbie Howard Easton.
Aye.
Amelia Aboff.
Aye.
Jahan Habib.
Aye.
Luke Schuster.
Aye.
And Michael Capuano.
Aye. That agenda item is continued. The next and last item on our agenda is 17 to 27 Holland Street. So I would like the clerk of the planning board to please read into the record the notice of that public hearing.
Absolutely, Mr. Chair. 17-27 Holland Street, PNZ 22-025. Green Soul Organics proposes to establish a cannabis retail sales use in the Mid-Rise 4 zoning district, which requires a special permit.
I would like to invite the applicant and the applicant's team to be unmuted and have whoever needs to have their screen shared have the opportunity to do so.
Sure, this is Steve Carey in the Planning Division. I see a Thomas Miller with his hand raised. Mr. Miller, I'm going to promote you to panelist. I'm going to do the same for a Will Chalfant and Rebecca Adams.
Is everybody promoted who needs to be? I think so. Okay. Well, welcome everyone.
Thank you.
I'm wondering if you've got a presentation for us, or a discussion, or an introduction for what we're looking to do, and planning board is ready, willing, and able to have the hearing, take testimony, and have some potential discussion by and between us tonight. We likely will not vote on this application until the next meeting to leave anything open for written comment as our usual practice. So welcome to make a presentation. Looking forward to it.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Will Chalfant from Calsa Design. If I could be allowed to share my screen, I
Yes, please.
can share the presentation.
This is Steve Carey in the Planning Division. Will, I believe I've just given you the permissions necessary. Cool.
You did. Thank you so much. Okay. So just once again, my name is Will Chalfant from Calsa Design. I am representing Green Soul Organics. Along with me are Thomas Miller from McDermott Miller Quilty and Rebecca Adams, who is the compliance officer for the project. I believe the developer owner, Taba Moses, is also on this call. If there are any questions for him, he can be made available. So quickly, just to go through Green Soul, this is a lifestyle brand where their culture and the cannabis collide. I'll get into this briefly. But again, here's our presentation. I'll just quickly, as an overview, go through the team, the brand, the information on the project, some renderings. I believe we actually omitted the security plans from this presentation, but they can be made available at a future meeting, as well as traffic mitigation, parking, and then a little bit about Green Soul's foundation that they run. So, as I mentioned, Taba Moses is the founder and CEO of Green Soul Organics. He's joined by Richard Harding, who's our Chief Compliance Officer and also is the founder of the Green Soul Foundation. Myself from Calsa Design, Joe Hanley, who's represented by Tom Miller this evening, and then Max Stern and Jim Smith are the other counsel involved in the project. These are all members of Green Soul. I don't think it's pertinent to this actual portion of the presentation, but we can follow up with them later if need be. So again, we're proposing a retail adult use cannabis store at the location of 17 Holland Street. Some of you may be familiar, this is the former Johnny D's site. At the location, there will be no delivery, no manufacturing or cultivation. The total build out, which is all internal, will be around 1,750 square feet. We're not proposing any additional parking, and the site is obviously within the Davis Square district, being right in the heart of Davis Square. So just some logistics. When fully operational, anticipate to have 16 to 20 employees. Hours of operation will be Monday through Friday, 9 to 10. And then on weekends, 10 a.m. to 11 p.m. on Saturday and 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. on Sunday. It's anticipated there'll be product deliveries 1 to 2 times per week, as well as cash pickups 2 to 3 times per week. And we can get into those locations later in the presentation. So just some code numbers here. Based on occupant load, we're allowed to have up to 11 people in the waiting area at the front of the store, 15 customers inside. We're able to handle around 30 customers per hour. We have 4 employees on site at all times, with a max occupancy of 32 folks. And we have 8 mobile and stationary POSs within the space. So again, just some familiarity. Honestly, when we started this project, that building was still under construction. So that's our before photo. And here's our proposed, which is really exclusively occurring behind the glass. The signage, which is shown right now a little bit large, obviously will need to comply with City of Somerville signage requirements. And we will get into that at a later date. So just a little bit more about the vibe of the store. We're actually completing another Green Soul dispensary in Central Square right now, and it's going to have a very similar aesthetic to what we're proposing here in Holland. The idea is to have really a mix of spaces within the space so that there are different vibes depending on the portion of the store that you're in. We're going to have a mix of, you know, urban street experiences with graffiti, some, you know, overhead doors on the wall for selfie opportunities, as well as a, you know, sort of bodega storefront within the store, as well as you know, just some higher end displays for all the products and merchandise that'll be available. I'll get into this a little bit once we get into the floor plan. So again, Holland Street's at the bottom of the screen. Next door to this is the recently opened, well, actually it's been open now for a little over a year, I think, the Poke sushi place. So the area in green on the screen is the sales floor plan. So obviously, as you're all familiar with cannabis dispensaries, there are regulations requiring all products be blocked from visibility from the general public walking by. But we want to activate the streetscape, and we don't want just this you know, wall right behind the windows there, not really inviting folks in. So we've enlarged that lobby space a little bit more than normal because of what we're trying to do in there. As I mentioned earlier, we have this urban aesthetic, and the idea is that that entryway is going to be reminiscent of a subway car, specifically a red line car, so that this has a relationship to the T-stop directly across the street, and also creates some of that interest, and people will be curious about what's going on in there, and it won't just be this blank wall with some photos hanging on it. So the idea is to really have some activation on that street. So again, we mentioned there's some different pockets within the store, and then the back of house area is denoted in this yellow, and that's where we have our vault storage, a kitchenette for employees, some storage lockers, as well as where loading will take place, and fulfillment will be handled prior to coming out to the customers. So I did misspeak earlier when I mentioned there was no exterior work done. We are proposing a new rear door on that street. Originally, there's a door here, existing door that goes into the common stairwell, but there were concerns about that mixing with the residents above, understandably. So we are filling in that door right where my cursor is, and then proposing a new door here on the back side that'll be solely for delivery use. And I'll get to that on a further slide. So again, this is the idea of what we're going to see in that entry space, minus the large cannabis bud shown here behind the seats. That'll obviously not be there, but the idea is the waiting seats will be similar to that of the T, a little bit more comfortable than the train seats. And then the doors entering and exiting the space will be very similar to that of the subway doors that you're familiar with on the T. Our intentions are for this to run significantly smoother, though, than the MBTA does. So I just want to put that out there now. So security measures, obviously anyone entering the facility has to be 21 or years of older. They'll be checked by ID in the security area prior to entry. They'll also be checked again once inside, as is common in these dispensaries. We have, you know, there's a redundant intrusion alarm system, motion detectors, a secure product vault. We've got 24/7 cameras inside the space and at the rear door. No general public will be under video monitoring, just that door, just to be clear. Electronic key card access will be required to go from the sales floor area to the back of house. So only employees can do that. And obviously no consumption is allowed on site, no loitering in or around the premises. Green Soul does intend to do walkarounds the neighborhood daily, just to make sure that, you know, none of their product trash is on the ground, and that they're being a good neighbor and steward to Davis Square. Obviously, traffic and parking is always a concern with anything going on in an urban environment. We feel that this location is about as good as it gets for a public transportation spot. Literally 123 feet across the street is the Red Line station. Several bus lines go right there on Holland Street, and the other streets is Aravis Square. Multiple zip car locations, a few municipal parking lots within less than a 10-minute walk, as well as the blue bike stations. And there are some on-street metered parking in the area, but I think the majority of customers here are going to be showing up via walking or public transit. So again, just to outline where we're talking about here, the building formerly Johnny D's, and we are proposing this right retail space along Holland. So some of the traffic mitigation plans for opening day, we obviously submit that 1 month before opening to the police department in the city to get their 2 cents and make sure everyone's on the same page. Online ordering systems will be utilized so for fulfillment to try to keep people in and out quickly. Typically, these transactions are less than 5 minutes in and out. We do have, as we mentioned, we provided some customer queuing space within the retail space. I think at this point, considering the number of dispensaries open in the city, I don't foresee the same influx of traffic that we saw maybe in Brookline at the outset of NADA opening or things like that. I think this is going to be, well received, but not the grand opening event that some of the others in the past have had. So we're not as concerned about the immediate traffic creations from that. Obviously, employees will be incentivized to use public transportation and provided with T cards. And some GSO meets all Somerville and Cannabis Control Commission zoning requirements. So this isn't allowed use in this location. And in case there was a question, Green Soul has confirmed that the kinder care does not fall under the zoning requirements, which is sort of kitty corner to this lot next to, I believe, Life Alive Cafe. So for loading, we do not want to, well, we can't do loading directly in front of the site. Obviously, that's been recently made a bike lane and all the parking's been removed. But thankfully, there are 2 loading areas very close by, one on Winter Street and then another down along Holland, which are used regularly by all of the businesses in this direct area. And it's a dedicated area. And I mentioned earlier, these deliveries are going to be happening 1 to 2 times a week, with cash pickups happening 2 to 3 times. So that addresses that. And then I don't know if Richard Harding's available, if he's online, but he could maybe talk a little bit more about the Green Soul Foundation. I'm not sure if he's on. If not, we can maybe discuss this further at the next meeting just to keep things moving. But if Richard is available, if you could raise your hand, maybe we
I don't think, Will, I don't think Richard or Tava have made it this evening.
Okay. All right. Well, then I will defer to him.
I do see one person. Did you mention someone else's name besides Richard? There's one person who's an attendee.
Yeah, that Pablo is not, as far as I'm aware, a member of our team.
Okay.
Okay. So I certainly don't want to speak to their foundation, but I know they've done a lot of good work in Cambridge, and they are local. They're both from Cambridgeport and are familiar with the area and a lot of the issues and opportunities that they want to create for folks of color in the area. But I don't want to speak to that on their behalf, excuse me. So with that, in the interest of making to the Celtics game, I'll hear your questions.
I appreciate the presentation very much. I will have some comments and questions after we open it up to public hearing, because we do have an individual in the attendee queue who might want to provide testimony. So I'd like to be able to hear from the public before I speak. But does anybody else on the board want to raise anything before we open it up? Luke, did you raise your hand? No. Okay. Okay. What I'd like to do now is open up this public hearing to anybody that wants to speak in support of this application. There's only one person that I can see who's in the attendee list right now, but I'm not sure if this individual would like to provide testimony. But If you'd like to provide testimony in support of the application, please raise your hand and I'll call on you, and you can be unmuted. Going once. Going twice. Seeing none, I'll close that portion of the public hearing and I will open it up to anyone that wants to speak in opposition to the application or otherwise express concern about it. Please raise your hand and I will call on you in the order which I see. Going once. Going twice. Oral testimony is now closed for this application. Okay. I'm wondering if I can change the way I view my colleagues here, because there we go. Can't see all of you. Okay, great. I would like to open it up to discussion by and between members of the planning board, to ask questions of the applicant or of staff, and discussion between us. So does anybody have anything they would like to raise at this time? Yes, Amelia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the presentation tonight. I do have two questions or concerns with this application. The first, the applicant did address in the presentation, that's the question of whether kinder care falls into the category of educational uses that cannot, where there is a 300-foot buffer required for an adult use cannabis retail location. I'm curious if the applicant could expand on what they mean by they confirmed that this is not an issue. That's definitely something that I see as a concern, and would love to understand whether that's been reviewed by staff or the city solicitor, or whether that was sort of confirmed internally by the applicant team.
Yeah, I can speak to that if the city would like, or we can allow staff to speak first. It's either way. I can speak to our process for thoughts on that.
I would like to hear from you and from staff if someone on staff is able to speak on this issue as well. But from both of you, I think would be helpful.
Well, I'll start since I've clicked the unmute button, and I seem to have jumped in first. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Tom Miller, McDermott, Quigley, Miller, and Hanley. Since this presentation was created, we've changed our name, so here we are. Thank you for hearing this tonight. So our determination for why kinder care does not fall under this category is that the definition of educational services is essentially our interpretation of it, and our understanding of it is essentially anything that is registered with the Department of Early Education or Early and Secondary Education, DESE. My wife's a teacher, so I only think of it in the acronym. Those are essentially educational institutions, those providing a curriculum and curriculum and teaching to children of a kindergarten through 12, K through 12 period. The kinder care is not registered through that agency. While they do have kids who may come up to the kindergarten age, they're not accredited through a DESE. They're accredited through a separate agency, and they don't, to our understanding and interpretation, they don't fall under that category. Hence, we feel that our understanding is that they don't fall within the buffers for that reason. And I'll hear the city's interpretation of that as well. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, through you, this is Emily Hutchings with Planning, Preservation, and Zoning Division. We agree with Attorney Miller's opinion. This is a licensed child care facility. It is not certified as an educational facility that teaches K through 12. So there are different licensing requirements, and they are defined differently under state codes. So what qualifies for the buffer area in Somerville's case is the educational institutions that are K through 12, not the child care facilities.
Thank you. It is not my question, it was Amelia's. I'm not sure if the answers satisfy your question.
No, I appreciate the clarification on both counts, and I guess I'll just voice to my colleagues, that being the way it is written now and the correct interpretation of that now, I will not take further issue with it, but I would raise that as something to consider, whether that the idea that we are, as a city, intending to separate hubs for children from adult use marijuana dispensaries, but that there is sort of a gap that exists for children up to the age of 6 if it's a privately licensed facility, strikes me as a little bit of an inconsistency, but I would welcome the opportunity to discuss if others feel similarly. But I understand that that's as it's currently written, and that's where we are today. The other question that I had for the applicant team is if we could revisit the issue of loading for a moment. I believe that the transportation plans that were provided referenced the loading zone being used only the one on the far end of Winter Street, but the architectural plans and narrative that were submitted correlate to the presentation you made tonight, where there would be loading from both the Holland Street sort of parking lot location and the end of Winter Street. And I wonder if you could confirm for us which of those is accurate.
Yeah, so I'm surprised that's in their narrative. I thought we discussed this with it, but both are viable options. I don't think we intend to dedicate one. It's more, I think there needs to be some flexibility considering the traffic in Davis Square with some of those deliveries. And so those two locations were identified as acceptable and currently used loading zones. We can certainly check in with traffic though to see if there's a reason that they did not include it in their report.
I could be mistaken, and I'll be happy to revisit the transportation materials that were submitted, but I believe that only the Winter Street loading zone was included in the analysis that was completed. And I think that's always a concern for these types of uses, is just understanding how and where and how far away trucks will be, et cetera, especially in an area with the high existing traffic and crash rate that was noted for all of the intersections in this area. So I appreciate if we could just double check that and make sure that the submission materials tick and tie with our, actual intention.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Who else? Luke, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One musing, I'll characterize it, on the proximity to an educational institution piece, and then a couple quick questions about proposed conditions. This is the first I've thought about this provision in the zoning code, but it does maybe conceptually to me kind of make sense that a child care facility might be treated differently within proximity to a cannabis shop. Just thinking about super young kids and the notion that they, I don't know, there'd be any negative influencing effect around a 4-year-old considering cannabis or too early. It just seems sort of implausible to me. Now maybe there's some other reasons I'm not thinking of, but and it seems like irregardless, the way it's currently written means that the 300-foot requirement wouldn't apply anyway. A few questions, and these are maybe a little bit more for planning staff on some of the conditions that are proposed as part of this. My sense is many of them are pretty standard, and I don't have strong objections, but one reaction just looking is it did seem like a long list of conditions, and just in the spirit of supporting small businesses, wonder if they're all truly necessary. So like the 2 transit screen displays, and maybe some of the things those would be showing are things like bus times or something, but for a shop literally directly across the street from the red line, you know, do we really need to require that they're purchasing 2 of these? I'll list these all because they're sort of related. Am I reading the proposed conditions right, that they would be required to both provide fully subsidized blue bike memberships and MBTA passes? I do read it that way, but is that truly the intent, or could it be each employee picks whichever one they'd want, but that they don't have to do both? And then the final condition says, it's a little vague, says they shall provide incentives to customers who take non-vehicular or public transportation modes to the site. You know, again, it's like incentives, you know, seem nice, but is that, I guess both, is that really necessary? Again, when it's like literally right at the red line stop. And if it is, maybe I'm not quite picturing what those incentives even would be. So I'll stop with that litany of related questions for anybody who wants to take them up.
Mr. Chair, this is Emily Hutchings. Through you, I can answer those questions. So good questions. These are all pretty standard conditions. The vast majority of these have been required for all cannabis retailers, including the transit screens, required blue bike memberships, MBTA passes, etc. The second transit screen display is unique to this application. It is due to the fact that there is no parking. I've confirmed this with mobility. These are all mobility division recommended conditions that are their standard conditions, or for this one, again, it was noted that this is because there is no vehicular parking related to this site. For other sites, other cannabis retailers, they have typically at least some vehicular parking established somewhere. I believe this is the particular reasoning for this recommended condition. These are recommended conditions. The planning board can choose whether or not they are appropriate. I also want to note that providing incentives to customers who take non-vehicular or public transportation modes to the site. This was an intentionally vague condition. Cannabis retailers are not permitted to provide cannabis related incentives. We've not established what those incentives might be, but we've left that open to the applicant. And this is also a condition that has been required of other cannabis retailers that have received special permits in the past.
And Luke, I can speak to that just briefly because I've done a few of these. A lot of times on the website of the dispensary, they'll say, you know, take the train to see us. We don't have parking. This is really, you know, your best method of getting here is to take public transportation. So it's not like a pay to, you know, play deal where you're getting an extra joint or something if you take the train. It's more about just letting people know that there is no parking, and the best method to get there is public transit.
That's helpful. Maybe on that last one, I wonder if we might, if that's the nature of what's likely to be done in practice, we consider changing that to shall encourage customers to take non-vehicular ... if it's not really what we think of as an incentive. On the question I had about, is it both blue bikes and MBTA passes, or is it actually intended to be or? Any response on that one?
Mr. Chair, through you, Emily Hutchings, it is intended to be both. This is a typical requirement for cannabis retailers.
Okay. I'd be curious if from colleagues, I don't know, anybody who has thought about this more than I have, like both on the really requiring both, and then also just the sum total of all these, do we all just feel like this is all good, or does it all add up to something at a certain point when this might not be the right encouragement of small business formation in our neighborhoods? I'll leave it with that.
Anybody else? Yeah. Mhm.
Sorry, couldn't get the mute button back pulled up. I just wanted to respond to Luke's question and say, I think a conversation about that as a standard practice is a fair one to raise and would welcome that discussion. I feel like for the purposes of, it sounds like staff is describing that we've issued these conditions in this structure to all of the sort of pure businesses, and I would hesitate to create a less level playing field necessarily. I'm not sure how to put that change into action without creating some unevenness, but I think it's a good question to raise. I did have one other question for the applicant, which is in terms of the area that you would plan to be patrolling for sort of what constitutes on-site use, or is there a plan or could there be an intention to include the park behind, the small park behind the T station? I do feel like with this location, the odds that customers are sort of wandering off in that direction is a more obvious one than some other cannabis locations that have come up before us recently. And if there is any way to include that in sort of the subject area to make sure that there aren't, you know, I know in other, I'm thinking about other conditions we've issued, and there was sort of a agreement to control what's going on the block, and I'm just not sure what the boundary, the right boundary or extent of premises feels like here to, sorry, that's a very open-ended question.
Yeah, I guess I'm hesitant to provide some sort of radius for that, but I think the spirit of it is more that they're going to be very familiar with the product packaging that they're selling at this location, and the intention is, if worst case, if they see something on the ground, they'll pick that up and dispose of it. It's kind of difficult to police how folks are going to break the law if they're going to go use this in public. So I think we can maybe put together some sort of schedule on that sort of outlines the area that they're going to be monitoring, because obviously there are other dispensaries in Davis Square, so it's, you don't want to necessarily blame one or the other, but maybe Rebecca can speak to this a little bit more. She's in the compliance side of things.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough question, in all honesty, right? To be able to say that we could maybe police, a specific area in a neighborhood that isn't really under their lease agreement. However, as being a good neighbor, obviously we wanted to make sure that we're appropriate and responsive to any kind of litter or loitering within the dispensary area. I think we can definitely come back with an answer, I think, for the next meeting as to, the location of where we can, sorry, my dog is barking in the background. I don't know if it's really loud or not, but we can definitely come back to you for the next meeting and tell you about, the area that we can patrol. And obviously we'll do our best to make sure that there's safety.
I appreciate that. I think it might be useful to just have a sense of what you think that obligation is, to make sure that everyone is aligned on what that expectation is. So that would be helpful if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Rebecca, what I'd like to do actually I'd like to poll my colleagues at some point is if we have someone with a dog in the background, I'd like it to be planning board policy that we get to see the dog.
You know what? I'm about to go grab him right now. Let me tell you.
Yes, Debbie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to the point on patrolling and security, I'd be a little hesitant to put on employees having to go out and patrol an area behind a T stop and approaching people that have decided to break the law and smoke outside. So I just wanted to mention that. And I was curious I know the city has been, we obviously have a lot of cannabis stores now in the city. And I was wondering how the this is more for staff, how they've been monitoring that in terms of complaints that may have come in, if that has been an issue around stores that have been operating for a while. Appreciating, to Amelia's point, that this is a bit of a unique location.
Mr. Chair, through you, Emily Hutchings. That is a very good question, which I do not have the answer to at the moment, but I can reach out to our public safety officials and see if they have any information on complaints that they may have received in the area. I know that we have some retailers that have recently opened up, so I'm not sure how much data there is, but I will report back with what I find out.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Chair, just and members of the board, just quickly, our understanding of the patrol is to, more a litter trash good neighbor that clean up any bags or whatever related to our sales. We make sure that we let our customers know that public use is not allowed, it is illegal, and that doing so is extremely problematic. If we see anyone using in public, our response is to contact police and work through them, but we're not our staff is not not members of public safety. They won't intervene if they see somebody smoking in public. Just that's not the policy. It's not good for anybody, to be honest. It will just create more problems. But we do want to be good neighbors and prevent any do our best to prevent any nuisance and prevent our customers from being those nuisances.
Yeah, Amelia.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't mean to be a stickler on this point, but this presentation was much lighter on security and sort of management of the exterior of the premises than I think most other presentations that have come before us are. And so any additional detail that you might be prepared to share next time on sort of what the scope of that is would be helpful. I could be mistaken, but I am thinking back to the dispensary that was permitted on Highland a few years ago. And I remember there being a lot of sensitivity for that one in particular about concerns about people using the product sort of on the street directly outside of the shop. And I don't know if that was in response to neighbor concerns in particular, or if that was something that the operator sort of had volunteered proactively. So I may be out of line here and trying to sort of compare what different shops are doing. But I think the information from Emily on sort of what public safety has been seeing would be really helpful. Thank you.
Anybody else before I go?
I see
Sorry.
Taba Moses, who is one of the owners here, he is in attendance now and has raised his hand as a attendee.
Okay, he's welcome to join us. I do see your thought I saw Michael's hand. Yeah. And if this gentleman wants to be introduced as part of the team, if we can have him be unmuted and on camera to say hello.
Chairman, I'm sorry, may I just address Amelia's comment really quickly?
Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you. So we apologize. We did remove the security section for the presentation. So we apologize. Obviously we should have included that. We did address it at both of the neighborhood meetings, just so you're aware. And we can definitely make sure that we can talk about it now if you'd prefer, or at the next meeting. But we're prepared to discuss it, and we have very strict security measures in place that do address neighbors' concerns as well as any public safety.
That's great to hear. Thank you.
And I think if you're willing to do it at the next meeting, so we can.
Sure, absolutely.
We'll be bringing you back up.
Okay, will do. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Michael, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be real quick tonight. I think the crux for me on this one is the loading plan and the general handling of the product. So just following up on Amelia's point here, I think it's condition 16 in the staff memo specifically points to the Winter Street loading zone. So if that could just kind of be clarified, both with the applicant and staff and or TAP, that would be greatly appreciated.
Mr. Chair, through you, Emily Hutchings, I'd just like to follow up on that. That is correct. There is a specific condition related to the Winter Street loading. There is also, I believe, a standard condition that is in there requiring digital copies of all required application materials reflecting any physical changes required by the board, if applicable. So if this application is approved with that condition regarding the loading, updated materials specifying that Winter Street loading area would need to be submitted as part of the record that would need to be reviewed by the planning staff prior to any issuance of a building permit.
Yeah, Mike.
Sorry, I just wanted to reply to that, Mr. Chair. For what it's worth, I'm open to both locations being part of the options here. I don't think we necessarily need to specify Winter Street. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page and we all agree, and it's kind of memorialized in an appropriate manner. So,
yeah, Amelia.
Thank you. I also don't have any opposition to the Holland Street loading area, except that, to the best of my recollection, and I'm so sorry I don't have it in front of me, I don't think the Holland Street loading area was addressed in the transportation materials that were submitted. So I would like there to be an agreement that either both have been analyzed, and we will approve both because they've been vetted and analyzed, or only Winter Street is approved because only Winter Street was vetted and analyzed. I have no opposition fundamentally to the Holland Street location. I just think if I'm recalling correctly, it may not be addressed in those submission materials. And my sincere apologies if I'm just misremembering.
I see Jahan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the applicants for the presentation. I think my question is not necessarily directed towards a response for tonight, but I would like to better understand what the owner operators have in mind with respect to the hiring plan for the employees that are going to be in this location, as well as if they have any thoughts or comments about how they're going to be connected to the larger David Square business community. Just because I'm very curious to see if there are any special considerations, thoughts that have been given in that regard. So again, not necessarily looking for a response tonight, although it's welcomed. Just want to get a little bit more insight in that area. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Someone from the applicant, do you want to respond to John?
Taba, do you want to
Hey,
speak to that?
everybody. Yeah, Taba Moses. I've been listening in. I kind of waved my hand when the question came up around kind of policing people and figuring out how do we monitor where people smoke. But in terms of hiring, I come from a community where we always helped each other and work together. I'm really familiar with Somerville, and the goal is to really hire as many people that are local as possible, and to work with different people in the area to make sure that we're able to do that, right? We want to be a representation of what the community is and give people opportunities to grow and be a part of our business.
Great. Thank you so much for the response.
Okay. Anybody else before I kind of say a few of my thoughts here? Okay. So I want to thank the applicant very much for a great presentation. I know you're going to supplement some of it next meeting to perhaps satisfy some of Amelia's questions to supplement that part of the presentation. My thoughts on it, I think it looks like a good location. I think you're addressing some of the initial concerns I was having on some of the street side activation because of the way that our laws and regulations and ordinances work when it comes to what can be displayed on the front when you're directly across from the T-stop. My concern is, and it has absolutely nothing to do with this applicant. My concerns have to do with because it's been raised by the applicant a number of times as well as by staff and members of the board, is the intensity of use and the saturation of use in Davis Square. One of the things that we have to look at, and I look at as a member of the planning board, is the mix of uses in a particular zone. And Davis Square, at my last recollection, we have permitted 3 cannabis sales uses in Davis Square, including the one on Highland Ave, and then 2 basically across the street from each other on Elm Street somewhat recently. And there's also a vape shop about 2 doors up the street here. One of the things that I have to look at as a member of the planning board is, are we having the mix of uses in the zone that kind of matches what we're hoping to get? So not everything is just kind of uniform. I've lived in the city my entire life. I don't think there are more than 2 liquor stores in any given square. And even if that's the case, they are kind of different styles. I'm thinking of Ball Square Liquors, and then down the street is the old Crowley Liquors, which is more of a a beer joint. To have 4 permitted cannabis sales uses within the Davis Square area, that's all within a 5-minute walk of each other, and a vape shop 2 doors up the street, just speaks to me as not good planning, irrespective of how great the applicant might be and the application might be. I wouldn't want 5 t-shirt shops in Davis Square either. It has nothing to do with the actual use. It has to do with the saturation of the same use in the same space. And so as one member, I'm pretty hesitant to put in a 4th or a 5th similar type location within a 5-minute walk of each other, where we don't do that for, and we don't approve of that type of thing for any other type of business. We always try to seek a mix, and to have 4 or 5 of the same type of business in the same 3 blocks, it to me doesn't meet the standard for what we have to, one of the conditions that we have to review and approve to give the relief that the applicant is seeking. So I'm going to need to really think about whether I'm prepared to vote to approve a permit that puts just a further saturation of the same use, irrespective of what that use is, in Davis Square, especially one that's, as everybody acknowledged, directly across from the T-stop. We already, I'm thinking of Ball Square, we already have, one dispensary directly across the street from that T-stop too. So I'm thinking about it as a planning initiative, and I'm not sure that having yet another of the exact same use that we've now permitted multiple times in the same small business district is good planning practice. So I'm gonna reserve my my thoughts on this one until the next meeting, obviously, and think about it a little bit more. But that's where my concerns lie. I think your loading will probably be fine, the security will probably be fine. It seems like a good business. It seems like you're all nice, honorable and upstanding folks that want to engage in the community. But I'm the chairman of the planning board, and so I'm tasked with a lot of things, including looking at what the saturation of uses in a particular area is. And to me right now, this doesn't meet the expectation that we should have as a planning board, irrespective of the actual application itself. So that's kind of where I am on this. you know, we're going to reconvene in a few weeks and think about it a little bit more between now and then. We'll leave the written comment period open until next Friday at noon. Planning at somervillema.gov for anybody that wants to do that. But as of right now, I'm reticent to add just another of the same use in the Davis Square area, where we haven't completed the Davis Square neighborhood plan yet as to what type of businesses we want in the square, irrespective of whether we want this particular type of business. The mix of businesses is what I'm referring to, and where they should be, and what the neighborhood wants to see as Davis Square kind of generally. So that's where I am on this. I don't really have any questions per se, because I think my colleagues have done a really good job at asking some of the things that were also on my mind. But that's the concern that I have as a member of the planning board. So I'm going to take some time to think about this, review any testimony we get in, and I'm going to look forward to a further discussion in a few weeks with my colleagues.
Mr. Chair, if you'll permit me for just briefly address, I want to address one thing about the saturation just very quickly.
Mhm.
We understand that, you know, there are other ones in this area. You used the example of liquor stores and how they're differentiated, how there's, you know, you can get a liquor store that is just a bottle shop versus one that focuses on different types of, you know, different types of specific regions and of wines or whiskey, whatever. You know, we can speak more to this at the next meeting, but Green Soul is a different type of retail cannabis retail store. They really do focus on their community and their give back. They really do focus on being members, not just the community in general, but the community locally. They are, you know, a strong addition to the area specifically, but they also focus on products that are unique to, you know, and not necessarily available at other dispensaries. This area, Davis Square in general, you know, like other uses, there are multiple different types of other uses in the area. And what I mean by that is there isn't just one clothing store, there isn't just one coffee shop, there isn't just one restaurant or one liquor store. There are multiples, and you know, as these uses come up, you know, begin to spin up, we will see. Honestly, there'll be a supply and demand. You know, we don't expect all of the dispensaries that open to maintain, as Will said at his opening. You know, we all saw what happened at Netta when they opened to Brookline. You know, that was a mess. Now we don't see that at openings going forward because of the all of the other stores that have come online so far. Supply and demand will tell us which ones actually survive. Honestly, to be perfectly, we feel that this one is a store that is unique and will be a benefit to the community, and will be one that the community chooses to go to and thrives, and will be an addition to Davis Square. Just as for you and the board members to think on for the next what is that, 14 days, because you know we're all looking forward to coming back on the 20th.
I appreciate the response, Attorney Miller. I really do. So thank you for that. This is something I'm going to have to think on as one member. You know, I can continue my thought process on that aspect of the discussion, but I'm gonna reserve that until maybe a couple of weeks if we need to. Does anybody else have any thoughts or questions or concerns before we close up shop for the evening and get ready for the Celtics? I see Amelia. Yes.
Am I running into Celtics time yet?
No, you got an hour and a half, but
Okay. If we are moving forward with this application, I would welcome thoughts from staff at our next meeting at any ways that we can reword our standard conditions to make them more easily enforceable for ISD, because the chair's comments do remind me of the fact that I believe there are currently several similar uses that have been permitted that are operating and are not in compliance with their permitted conditions. And I know that's something where in general we struggle with how to support ISD in better carrying that out. And if we can provide any clarifying language here to make more clear to ISD our expectations, perhaps that would be helpful in allowing them to more effectively enforce permitted conditions for these special uses.
I think I see Mr. Moses using the raise hand button. I don't know if Mr. Moses wants to speak, but you are welcome to, sir.
Yeah, no, I just like to thank you guys for the opportunity. Look forward to answering any questions and concerns at our next meeting. And hopefully you guys can see us as a positive group and community. You know, I grew up down the port. My community is a community that struggled, right? It's been a struggle to open up Black businesses and for minorities to be successful. And we're one of the few minority-owned cannabis businesses in the area and around the country that are trying to accomplish what we're accomplishing. And I think we can bring a different perspective. And we're local. We're not a big business, right? We're a small business. We're not backed by a bunch of MSOs, right? And we look forward for the opportunity to just be in the community. And that's one of the reasons I was able to get that location, because the landlord resonated with my story and what we were actually trying to do. And on top of that, I mean, we've been paying rent for over 4 years. COVID hit. It stopped us from being able to open at that point. And then the regulations in Somerville changed. So we just been hanging on, looking for an opportunity to be able to actually open.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Moses. And by my concerns that I raised earlier, I tried to make it clear, and I'll just reiterate. I think you very likely would be a great addition to the neighborhood, particularly being local, and being engaged in the community. And so I hope I didn't make you or anyone feel that was kind of the background of my comments, because it certainly is not what I intended. My thought is purely as a member of the planning board and what I have to look at in zoning. So thank you very much for addressing that aspect of the business. It means a lot.
No, I understand. And I think you look at liquor stores, right? I look at cannabis, there's gonna be lounges. You look at more like bars and themes, right? Some people, there's a big gold rush, the gold rush is over, and now it's gonna be about boutique products. There's gonna be brands that are gonna come to Massachusetts. It's gonna be about who has the relationships to bring those brands and bring these unique products to Massachusetts, right? It's not just about selling someone a pre-roll and they don't know what they're smoking and they don't know what's in it. So I think the way that you're looking at the business now is the landscape has changed in other places and is coming to Massachusetts. So what you see as your cannabis store over the next 6 to 8 months, even the next 2 years, is gonna completely change, and it's gonna be based on relationships with successful brands, and stores will have a chance to say, look, I want to put meaningful brands in my store that resonate with the community that I'm doing business in, right? And I think that's how the game is going to evolve, and the cannabis business is going to evolve state by state and around the country, because all these MSOs have shown that just putting a bunch of money into something and we have product that you can smoke doesn't work, right? It still has to be good. It has to be unique, and people want to like be a part of a story, right? Regardless of whether it's the brand or the retail side. So I feel like that's something that we're bringing to the table, and that's things that all the cannabis retail stores are going to have to try and figure out. And like my lawyer said, Tom said, it's going to be based on who can survive based on what they bring to the table. And we're just asking for a chance.
Thank you very much. I very much appreciate you joining us and giving us that that part of the presentation and where you're coming from. It's always really helpful to to speak with folks who are looking to get the business up and off the ground. So I appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you.
Does anybody else have any comments or questions of staff or the applicant or of each other before we move along and adjourn for the evening? Okay. Seeing none, I do want to thank the applicant and the applicant team for the presentation and for sticking around for our questions and making such a great presentation. We will reconvene with you on the 20th. And we're going to leave, as I said earlier, but I'll repeat myself. We're going to leave the written record open until Friday, next Friday at noon, planning at somervillema.gov for written testimony. If nothing further on the agenda, the chair moves to adjourn, seconded by Amelia. If we could have a roll call vote, please, Steve.
This is Steve Carey in the Planning Division. Deborah Howe Easton.
Aye.
Jahan Habib.
Aye.
Luke Schuster.
Aye.
Michael McNeely.
Aye.
Amelia Abach.
Aye.
And Michael Capuano.
Aye. Okay, at 7:09 p.m., the planning board is adjourned, and I'll see you all in a few weeks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a nice night. Go Celtics.
Go Celtics.
Celtics.
Thank you.